Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to get started. Thank you for coming out to today's Munch and Learn. Yes. Just a couple pieces of housekeeping information before we start. This Sunday, the 27th, is the last day for John Leslie Breck, American Impressionist, for Matthew Lee, and for the interactive gallery exhibit, Who Is That Artist? So if you haven't gotten a chance to see them, please do so. So as I said, they're leaving this Sunday. After that, however, you will still be able to view our permanent exhibit in the residence hall galleries. We ask that you please silence or turn off your cell phones for the duration of the presentation. And now I would like to introduce today's speaker, Caroline Mitchell Carrico. Carolyn is a native Memphian who spent over 10 years working in Memphis's cultural nonprofit sector while earning her MA in history from the University of Memphis. She interned at the archives at the Center for Southern Folklore and the exhibits department at the National Civil Rights Museum. For over a decade, she worked in the exhibits department at the Memphis Museum of Science History, the Pink Palace. At Munch, her projects included curating the renovated mansion exhibits and the national award-winning temporary exhibit, Making Memphis, 200 Years of Community, as well as writing content for the museum's digital channels. She also taught museum studies and public history courses at the University of Memphis and Christian Brothers University, and now she runs StoryBoard Memphis. So thank you so much for coming and talking to us today.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me? Okay, great. If I start whispering, let me know. Sorry, just realized my dad was calling me. Okay, so thank you for that introduction. So my name is Caroline Carrico, and I am the Manager of Programs and Associate Editor at StoryBoard Memphis. And so my presentation today is called Filling a Narrative Gap. And we are going to talk about, I'm going to talk about who we are. It's a little bit of history, so you know where we fit into the Memphis landscape, what we do, and some examples of the stories that we tell. And then I'm going to ask you what narrative gaps you see in Memphis, what stories aren't being told. And I've got my notepad up here and I'm going to make some notes. So what you tell me could end up in StoryBoard in the future. And then I'll give you some ways that you can connect with us. And also, of course, questions. So if you have any questions, hold them till the end and I'd be happy to do my best to answer them. So who is StoryBoard Memphis? It's not these guys, but I just really love this picture. That's Wayne Dowdy. He is the chief archivist at the Memphis Public Libraries. Willie Bearden is a documentarian, and Otis Sanford, who's a political commentator. And the reason they're up there is because they were our speakers at an event that we did back in October, looking at this historical moment. We asked historians how we think historians in the future will look at this moment. And they were our three speakers. So what we are is a nonprofit, and we are a multimedia production company. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about us. So what you guys are holding in your hand is the current version of StoryBoard Memphis. When StoryBoard started in 2018, Mark Fleischer, who is our executive director and founder, realized that there was a gap in the stories that were being told in Memphis. He moved here from California. His wife is from Memphis originally. They moved here to be closer to her parents. And he was at a point where he was looking to start something new. And so he did a lot of research and realized that Memphis does a good job of talking about current events, but not so much covering what's happening in the cultural sector or what's going on with urban planning. And so he started StoryBoard Memphis that used to look like this. So in 2018, this is newsprint, like actual newsprint. You could pick it up for free around town. By the end of 2019, it was self-sustaining. He had enough advertisers and sponsors, and it was available at 70 locations around town for free. You'd find it where you found the Memphis Flyer. And then in 2020, the pandemic happened. And a lot of the advertisers, to maintain their own businesses, they cut their advertising budgets. And no one was going anywhere because we all had to stay at home. So there was nowhere to go pick up free magazines. So this very easily could have been the end of StoryBoard, but if you've ever met Mark, he is, I can't think of a good word. He's very enthusiastic and he's not gonna let a good idea die. So during the pandemic, he started the long process of reimagining StoryBoard as a nonprofit. So it went from a for-profit venture with him as the only employee to a 501c3 nonprofit incorporated in the state of Tennessee with a board of directors. And as of September of this year, me and another staff person. So we've grown exponentially. So as a nonprofit, everything that we do needs to flow through our mission. And our mission is, through the power of storytelling, StoryBoard Memphis connects the city's authentic assets. And so if you're familiar with nonprofits, I'm sure many of you are, what this means is that as a business model, everything that we do goes back into fulfilling our mission. So I'm not going to read our vision to you. Visions are always what we hope will happen in an ideal world. We want everybody in Memphis to be connected to each other, to know what's going on, and to care about this place that we call home. So this is kind of what we look like today. We can say that we're 100% Memphis. So we have over 20 contributors. They all live in Memphis. They are all different, across all different demographic lines, whichever demographics you want to use. We also span industry and experience levels. We are distributed in every zip code, and part of the way that we do that is through our partnership with the public libraries. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later because there are partners on multiple ventures. But in terms of distribution, it's very important to us that Memphians have access, and not all Memphians have the disposable income to be subscribers to our magazine. So we provide copies for free to all of the public library branches that they can then add to the circulating collection and check out to people, with the intention that more people will be able to read it and be part of what we're doing. Let's see here. We are also printed in Memphis. We're printed with SC Tooth Company. There's a story about them in our second issue if you'd like to know more about their history. We're also looking at adding some merchandise, and so we're looking at Memphis screen printers. We don't want to send it off. We're very passionate about all of the money that we raise here staying in our town and supporting the writers and entrepreneurs who live here. So that's great, but what do we actually do? So we are a multimedia production company. And so we produce a magazine, which you all have a copy of. That's issue 1. It came out in November. Issue 2 is currently available at Novel if you're interested in purchasing it. It's also at, we're at Burke's Bookstore, Book Juggler, Demore Books and Things on North White Station. We're also distributed in lots of locally owned retailers. We produce digital content on our website and social media channels. Our website, storyboardmemphis.org. So unlike a lot of publications, instead of publishing things online and then printing them, anything that's going to go in print goes in print first and then goes up on our website later. We also have a podcast called StoryBoard 30 that streams on our partner, the library's channel. So they have a lot of Memphians don't know, the library has a radio channel, WYPL. They have a lot of great content, and StoryBoard 30 airs on Saturdays and Sundays. So our new episodes are always there first. And so we interview people in nonprofits, business, the cultural sector, all the interesting people doing interesting things. And we also have a streaming TV show that is currently in production. Octavia Young started Memphis Centric, which is a streaming Roku channel. It's going to be going live this spring. It's been in production. It's been in the works for about 1.5 years now. And so StoryBoard TV is going to be one of the shows on there. So we're in production on that, which again is also great, but does not tell you much about who we actually are. So I'm going to use the rest of my time to tell you about some of the stories that we tell. And I could go on and on, so I'm trying to make sure that I respect your time. So you might have heard from my biography, I am a historian. That's my training. I went to Christian Brothers University, and then I went to University of Memphis, and my focus is on local history, and I'm really interested in the cultural sector in Memphis. So basically, StoryBoard is the dream job for me, so I'm really lucky. And the reason that I started working with Mark at StoryBoard is because of the A. Schwab project. So I'm sure many of you have been to the A. Schwab store on Beale Street. Yep. So it is located on historic Beale Street. It's the longest continually operated store on Beale Street. We're pretty sure it's the longest continually operated store in Shelby County. We're still doing some research to verify that. We'd like to say that it is currently. So it's been there since the 1870s, and it's been there through a lot of Memphis's historic moments. So multiple economic depressions, including the Great Depression, so multiple wars and rationing, also through the redevelopment of Beale Street. It's one of the reasons that parts of Beale Street still exist today. But what's interesting about Schwab is no one's ever done a complete history of the store. And in the basement, which I wish I would have brought a picture, there are roughly 120 cardboard boxes full of the store's archives that have never been processed until now. So we're partnering with the Schwab store, with the ownership of the store, and with our friends at the public library to digitize the archive and make it accessible to everyone. So we're going to use the content to tell stories through all of the channels that we just talked about. But part of history, and the reason I'm a historian, is it's a conversation between people. It's historians looking at the same documents and drawing different conclusions. So to be good history and to be good public historians and stewards of the public trust, we need to make that available for other people to look at the same sources. So as we do this, you will be able to go on Dig Memphis and look at the same information that we're looking at and if you draw different conclusions, we would love to hear them. Another really interesting thing about the Schwab story is that the store was owned by the Schwab family for 4 generations, sold in 2011 to a management company that is Terry Saunders is the face of, and they're very dedicated to this project. And Elliot and Beverly Schwab still work in the store. They're members of that 4th generation. We're actually interviewing Elliot next week to talk to him about what's going on. So in addition to the archiving portion of this, we're also doing interviews with people who have worked in the store and people who are connected to the redevelopment of Beale Street. And the goal is that at the end of this, we'll be able to produce a book that tells a complete story of A. Schwab and also its role on Beale Street, in addition to the fact that this is an immigrant story, because your first A. Schwab, Abram Schwab, was a Jewish immigrant from Alsace-Lorraine. And that part of the story really hasn't been explored very much. So essentially, there's a lot to tell there. And I spend 1 day a week scanning things at the library, and I've created about 1,500 files. 1,500 files, and I've gotten through 1 box. So there's going to be a lot to go through. The Union Avenue Anthology is another project that I'm working on. So how many people like driving down Union Avenue? No? Yeah. Okay. So what we're doing is we're looking at Union Avenue, how it originally came about, how it was planned to be, and then what actually happened. And then also looking at where Union Avenue could go going forward. This was something Mark started working on during the pandemic. And it's something that I never had thought about until I started looking at it. So in the issue that's coming out next, I just finished writing about what Union Avenue looked like when Memphis's first 3 decades. And you wouldn't have even recognized it. It was planking, it flooded all the time. There were some great newspaper articles about how people's shoes kept falling off. You had to cross it. There was also a boundary between Memphis and South Memphis, and there were lots of newspaper articles suggesting that people build a wall between the two to keep the people out just along the middle of Union Avenue. So Union Avenue has been in the newspaper for a really long time. And part of what makes StoryBoard different from other outlets in town is that it's going to take us about, I would guesstimate, 3 to 5 years to tell the A. Schwab story, about 1.5 years of publishing the Union Avenue Anthology, so that we can really take our time, go deep into it, and tell the stories from as many perspectives as we can. We're not limited by really tight deadlines. We're okay if stories take a long time to tell, which is part of the reason why we print quarterly. So another thing that we do is the Behind the Arts Storytellers. So Behind the Arts is a storytelling workshop that we've done for the last 6 months with support from the Artsville Communities grant from Arts Memphis and the Tennessee Arts Commission. So we were able to have 8 storytellers who are at different points in their careers. Some are very experienced reporters, some are still in college. And we were able to pair them with different arts organizations in town to do in-depth stories. So we had one person at the Metal Museum, someone at Stax, and I wish I'd written them all down but we had somebody else who was working with the local magicians community, which she's a part of, to tell their story. And so what that enabled us to do is not only tell some stories with cultural institutions who don't always get a lot of time in print media or online even, it also allowed us to build up a new group of contributing writers that we can pull from in the future. And this is a very diverse group of writers, again, across multiple demographics. So age, race, where they live, and stage of life. So it's very important to us that we diversify our writing pool and that we are telling as many perspectives as we can. Another program that we are in the middle of is our Pandemic Reflections. This one was made possible by the Tennessee Arts Commission. They had a special grant during COVID to do specifically things that would help artists, because artists were significantly negatively impacted by the pandemic. A lot of artists lost income. And so what we did was we were able to commission 6 local artists. So we've got a writer, a couple of illustrators, photographer, a reporter, to reflect on the pandemic in whatever way they chose to. It was a very open-ended call. And we got some amazing entries, and it was very hard to pick from them. So this is, I'm not going to read you this quote. This is from Urban Thoughts More. He was one of them. So in this current issue, issue 2, that's the one that we just came out with this week, we have 3 of them. So one is Pedro Acevedo. He's a reporter, and he is looking at the impact of the pandemic, the positive impact on members of the disabled community. So sorry, I didn't mean to jump forward. Members of the disabled community and the impact that working from home has had on work culture for people who have mobility issues specifically. And as a member of that community, he is uniquely positioned to tell that story. So that's in there. We also have a graphic essay from Michaelia Moore. She was talking about how losing her job during the pandemic is what enabled her to get involved with social activism with the Byhalia pipeline, and gave her the space to figure out how to use her art for social justice. And she told all this through a graphic essay that's beautifully done. The other one that's in there is Jamie Harmon. You might be familiar with the Quarantine Memphis project. His portraits are currently on view. All of them are on view at Crosstown Arts right now. And if you get a chance, I hope you'll go. It's every gallery space in there is full of these portraits that he took. He took over 800 in about 2 months. And so he picked 12 of them and wrote a little bit about what that process was like. And those are in this issue. Urbans is going to be in the next issue. He had a very difficult experience during COVID. He lost multiple people to the virus, and he also lost someone to gun violence. And so his story is very different from everyone else's. He also paired it with his artwork and the poems that he wrote for the funerals. It's very personal. We also have in the next issue, Martha Park, who is a local artist. She was pregnant during the pandemic and drew about her experiences with that. So this is what I'm very excited about. It's currently ongoing. Another thing, let me check the time. Okay, so we're also starting to publish obituaries. So we're announcing that in this current issue. And it might at first seem like an odd fit because we're not a traditional news outlet, right? We're not following what's going on in city council. The Daily Memphian does that. Where we fill a gap is that obituaries are incredibly expensive. So it costs a lot of money to have an obituary published that's more than just a couple of sentences. And so what we're doing is hopefully providing a platform for people to be able to share their loved ones' stories. And we're allowing people to do it just online or online and in print. And the cost that we're charging, $25 and $50 respectively, just to cover our costs. The idea is for this to be self-sustaining. We're not intending for it to be a revenue stream for us. And the reason this came up is actually because of that panel that I talked about at first. Wayne Dowdy was talking about how a challenge for historians in the future is going to be that there's not many obituaries published right now. And so obituaries is where, and I mean, it's true, it's where we get a lot of our information about people who came before us. And so out of that, our team got together and we're like, you know what? We've got space. This is a need in our community. And so hopefully people will take advantage of it, because we would really love to be in a position where we have so many obituaries, we have to run a special issue. That way we can remember the stories of the people in our community who matter, because they matter to people. We also publish poems. I just got a great one today. None of us on our staff are poets, so this one's really exciting for us, because on our staff, people are historians coming from a more journalist background, and so the creative writing is very exciting for us. We also, it's named after Mary Burns, who is the who was the owner of Java Cabana and Cooper Young. And so she was a very earnest supporter of Mark at the very beginning and told him, you have to have poems. You can't have this publication without poems. And she's the whole reason that we do. So another part of our mission that we care very deeply about is amplifying what other nonprofits in town are doing. So in that issue that you've got in front of you, some of those came from our conversations that we had with other nonprofit leaders. One of them in there is from NPI in the Works, talking about, excuse me, the housing problem in some Memphis neighborhoods that is, I think, increasing across not just our city, but also our region and nationally, and what they're doing about it. Not just that there's a problem, but what solutions they see, and also providing ways people can be informed and help them by spreading the word about what they do. We also, it matters a lot to us to share about what cultural institutions are doing. So you can go on our website and find out what's going on with Tennessee Shakespeare Company, Ballet Memphis, Playhouse on the Square, the Dixon. Really, we're reaching out to every cultural institution in town and asking, how can we help you guys get the word out? And sometimes that's just re-releasing press releases and sharing it on our social media, inviting people to go see what's going on in the community. And sometimes it's us assigning a freelancer to go and review something or go talk to people in the community. We also work with Volunteer Odyssey. We actually share a building with them. We're located at Aero Creative, which is on Central Avenue. It's right off Central Avenue, right across from where Central Barbecue is, those streets that dead end into the railroad tracks. We're in a warehouse in between two of the streets. And so they're upstairs, they're our upstairs neighbors, and they were walking by one day and knocked on the door and said, hey, think we could work together? And we said, absolutely. So their program manager actually writes a column for us once a month, highlighting one of the nonprofits that they work with, because they help match nonprofits with skilled and talented volunteers who want to make a difference, and making sure that volunteers have a good experience and the nonprofit has a good experience. Which, if any of you guys have volunteered, you know how awful it is when you go somewhere and you don't feel like you're really wanted or needed. And they're trying to fix that problem. And so once Dan, in this month, she wrote about the V&E Green Line and how it's volunteer run, what you can do to support them. And the one thing that they ask for the most is that you go use the Green Line. So it's not always an ask for money or your time, sometimes it's ask for your attention. And so we want to help them get the word out. We also, one of our partners is Chapter 16, which is a literary project of Humanities Tennessee. They're really the only people in the state who are making a concerted effort to review works of literature and nonfiction and poetry that are being produced by Tennessee writers. So that coverage is gone from most local papers, if they had it ever. And so they provide content, we can use it however we would like to. So we're one of the only places that republishes Chapter 16 in print. The Commercial Appeal does sometimes. And so we're really thrilled to be able to do that. And some of the reviewers are actually from Memphis, like Dr. Aaron Gutsuzian from the University of Memphis. So it gives us a chance to amplify the work that other people are doing. Another type of story that we tell are personal narratives. And Candace Eccles is one of our most frequent contributors. She writes a column called The Yellow Chair Chronicles. Get it? Eccles. So she She writes a lot about things that are going on in her life. She's a mother, she's got young kids. Her experience is very different from some of our other contributors. Another one of our regular columnists, Ken Billette, is a cancer survivor who's very active with melanoma research. He also travels a lot, and he got a really good sense of humor and does a lot of photo essays for us. And so one of the things we try to do is make it known to people in the community that we're a place that is open to publishing your work. So if you are a writer or have something you would like to see in print, we're a place you can pitch it to. Not all of our writers are professionals. Some are, and some are people like Candace, who actually came to one of Mark's writing workshops, had always wanted to be a writer, and had never really had the place to publish what she did. And so she's been writing for us for over a year. She's been in print, and since then, she's actually gone on to publish in other places too, including she published her first children's book during the pandemic, like it's been in the quarantine. It's all about one of those pandemic puppies, which she has. It's very entertaining and very cute. If you have any small children in your life, I recommend it. It's available at Novel. Small plug for Candace. And so some of our writers are, one of the things we strive for is equity when it comes to writers. Not everyone, just like not everybody can afford to purchase a subscription to StoryBoard, not everyone can afford to work for free. Not everybody can afford to spend their time writing and not be paid for it. And that's something that we recognize and are actively fundraising for and write grants for, to be able to pay writers. So the pandemic storytellers, the behind the art storytellers, they were all paid. And it's very important to us that we be able to diversify our writer pool by giving people the resources they need to be able to write. And some of our writers are volunteers, and it's very exciting to be in a place to be able to provide support for our creative community like that. Those are some of our stories. There's a lot more, and I could talk to you guys forever, but that gets really boring. So we really focus on arts, culture, community, and history. And when I say history, it's not just history for history's sake. It's how the past connects to our present. And as a historian, that's what I'm very passionate about, is how can we take what's happened in the past and see the through line to today, and how might that impact us in the future. We also talk a lot about urbanism and things that are going on in our built environment. For example, in this upcoming issue, it's in edits right now, so it's at the forefront of my mind. Dane Forlines, who works with the Heights CDC, wrote about gas stations in Memphis. We have more gas stations per capita than any other city, I believe. And we're pairing that with Josh Whitehead, who used to be the city planner, now is back in private practice as a lawyer. He wrote for his wonderful blog called Creme de Memph, which we republished some of his content so that it's in print. He wrote about the Fortune's Belvedere Drive-In, which used to be on Belvedere, and that location is now a gas station. So looking at kind of that through line of, well, if you say we've got so many gas stations, that means that some of the things that were there, that were in our built environment, aren't anymore. So here's one specific example of something that was a very unique building in Memphis that's now a gas station. So that's the kind of history we try to do. So I'm curious to know what narrative gaps you all see. What stories do you wish were being told? Yeah.
So, congratulations on your first edition. That's great.
Thank you.
More to come. There are probably three individuals that come to mind. You may be familiar with Judy Ogle, who was there for 20, 30 years providing presentations and on-site tours downtown. He's moved to Nashville several years ago. I don't know how you could get him back or videotape him or something, but he is a treasure of information and a very high energy person. So that's what maybe bring Jimmy back in some.
Bring Jimmy back, okay.
Second is Willie Beard, who I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yep.
He's been instrumental in capturing the history of Memphis on video and personal presentations and so forth. He used to spearhead a program with the University of Memphis on the history of the Delta. And they started doing that about 4 or 5 years ago, and it was a complete history not only of Memphis, northern Mississippi, all the way down to Vicksburg. they have done that for years. And I don't know whether it's a funding issue or whether somebody's no longer in charge.
Yeah.
And then third, Charles Crawford, who you may know at the University of Memphis, is another person who is just an absolute jewel, as we do about it. I don't know, he no longer runs the program, the classes where he actually goes physically out to locations in Memphis, but he does run a program where he brings in guest speakers. And I'm just curious whether or not you're leveraging people who have been somewhat famous here for the last decade or two.
Yeah.
And making sure that somebody captures their intellectual capital about Memphis, whether it's in writing, whether it's a video, or whether it's personal interviews, whatever. But it seems to me that we're missing capturing some of the people who have been really out in front about Memphis for many years. And two of them are up in age, and two people may not be available anymore, but somebody needs to capture these people while they're still alive and conversing.
So Jimmy is yes. So Jimmy did a lecture series at the Pink Palace before he moved. And yes, he did. And they're all videotaped and they are all with the public library now. I was involved in that one when in my former job. And also our the new issue, the cover is the Equality Trailblazers Monument downtown, which if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend going when it's getting dark because it's got photo sensors in it and it lights up at night. It's very beautiful. And the whole reason we have that story is because Jimmy sent us an email and suggested that we talk to Paula Casey. So he's very much involved in passing along stories. And then Willie is also, yes, so Willie and Mark have worked together very closely. And so he's actually, I believe, going to be videotaping something for us soon, but capturing their knowledge is a great idea. And Dr. Crawford was one of my professors in graduate school. So he is an absolute treasure. I agree. And his work with the oral history archive the University of Memphis has is just truly astounding.
Okay, so you've got some of these people captured.
Yeah, but always room for more, which is great. Thank you. Anybody else? What do you want to see? What do you want to read about? Yeah.
I want to read, first of all, this is awesome. I already have my subscription already. Love to see and we have over 80,000 Latinos in Memphis, and I would love to read about people like me that live in Memphis. So I'm sure it's in the works, but I'd be happy to get with you and see what we can come up with.
I would love that.
There's many people. When I came to Memphis 20 years ago, there were 5,000 Latinos. This community is growing.
Mm-hmm.
I am currently planning, co-created an exhibition with some Latina young ladies on quinceañeras. So we would love to invite you to come see that, and everybody who's going to come and see it. But I would love to read more about that because we are looking at a second generation at this point. The very young community. We're looking at teenagers trying to get to school, trying to get to college. A lot of these folks are undocumented. As you all know, Tennessee has banned critical race theory education in schools. And so, we're looking at how do we all live together. We have Black community, we have white community, we have the Latinos now in Memphis. So how do we all come together? Black community and Latino community share a lot of issues, most of it poverty. So I mean, I think those are stories, and I know that you guys tell your stories with spaces as well, and like physical location. And I think that itself is really interesting. Where are the pockets of Latino neighborhoods, businesses picking up everywhere? I think it would be interesting to see that.
Yeah. So I think so too. I would love to talk to you guys about the quinceañera exhibit and any other. I would love to talk to you later. Absolutely. Sorry, I'm trying to write and think and talk at the same time. I promised I would write everything down. I am not lying.
And I also want to tell you that I see this as a really resource for teachers who are not allowed to teach what they're supposed to be teaching. Right? So resources like that come from Memphis or Memphis that explain with faces, with histories, with images, beautiful photographs here. It's a really great resource for teachers. So I would think that there might be a connection.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we have one of the things we are trying to do. I didn't put this up on a slide, but one of our core values, I think, diversity, equity, inclusion, and access, DEIA, is used as a buzzword a lot right now. And we're trying to work through how we can very intentionally have contributors that are reflective of our community, how we can be fair to them that with inclusion, and how we can make sure everyone has access. And so as a very young organization, we have the advantage of we're building these systems as we go. So we're trying to build them into our processes for how we hire and how we recruit people. And so at this point, we only have one person who has self-identified as Latino as a writer, and we are wanting to have more. And so one of the ways we were able to do that was through our pandemic storytellers. Since we were able to offer people a good commission to do it, it opened it up for people to be able to apply. So absolutely, thank you. What else? What do you want to read about? What would make you pick up a magazine and read it? Okay. That's a great point. I actually just got to write about one of the fairies, one of my Union Avenue anthology. Yes. But what was that relationship like when transit wasn't as easy? Cool. I think people can shout things out. It takes me a minute to write. And I also, it's like what you were talking about with the Delta Project, right? There's these stories where our whole region is connected and you can't really take anything out in isolation. I agree.
It was a 2-day symposium, free, and they had to cut it off 500 attendees. It was very, very popular.
So clearly the interest is there, right?
And someone's leading the effort.
I can tell you that on the TV show, I know that I'm less involved with the content for the TV show than I am for the magazine and the website, but I do know that Mark has been filming in the Delta, and I believe that's part of that content stream right now, but there's always room for it to be elsewhere too. Thank you. What else do you want to read about? Give me your ideas. I'm gonna throw this up here just in case you're interested. These are QR codes that will take you to our newsletter if you would like to subscribe to the magazine. I also encourage you, when you're finished with your magazine, please pass it on to someone else you think might be interested. I'd love for more people to know who we are. As a young organization, one of our biggest struggles is, I tell people I work for StoryBoard and they say, for what? So I was so excited when I was asked by the Dixon to come talk, because I was like, yes, I can tell more people about what we do. And I hope you can tell that I'm very passionate about it. I believe very strongly in what we're doing. And so if you think of other things, my contact information is on our website. I believe it's in that issue as well. The QR codes to these are also in the magazine. Please contact me. Let me know the ideas as you think of them. Okay, we can't do everything quickly, but I read every email that I get and try to respond right away. So I care very much that we're telling stories people want to hear about. And the only way we know is if we ask and listen. So what questions do you have for me? Yes. It is a lot. So it was definitely intended to be a magazine that you can sit with for a while. And it's one that can comfortably live on your coffee table for a month or two and you have time to read it all. So part of it is the first issue was a lot of things that had been published online during the pandemic that hadn't been able to be in print. These upcoming issues it's really fun to be able to be in the planning process. It's lovely to be at the table. So we do a lot of, sometimes things come our way. Actually today, the reason Mark isn't here, he was gonna come so I could introduce him, but he's actually on his way to Mississippi. He is interviewing a professor at Rhodes who wrote a very interesting story about Ernest Withers at the Emmett Till trial. And he has a different interpretation than what's been presented in the past. And we're going to publish it in our next issue. So it's going to be about a 6,000 word story, which in terms of print is a humongous story. I think we have 6 pages for this in our next one. And he's interviewing him in the courthouse about that, so we can provide some context for the story. So that's so he emailed me out of the blue and pitched the story. And so we're actually building the issue around that, because after we read it, we're like, wow, this is something that needs to be told. Some of it is things people pitch to us. Others are, we try to stay very in the know about what's going on in the community so that we can send people to cover different things that are happening. Since we're not news, we have some space to be able to see like what, like Jimmy Ogle was the one who gave us our cover story for the current issue, because he emailed us and said, you absolutely have to talk to Paula Casey. And I think everyone was a little surprised with where the story went, because it ended up being less about the monument and more about the process of trying to get a monument for women's suffrage in the city of Memphis, and the long process of memorializing this event throughout the whole state. So it's about the monument and the sculptor and the people who are honored on it, but it's also about this group of women who worked really hard for a decade and a half to get all these monuments up around the city. And so there's a lot of saying, oh, I wish we could write about that. I guess we'll put it on the website. The great thing about the hard thing about print is that we only have 48 pages and only half of those pages are in color. Hopefully our goal is to move toward having the whole thing in color, because that gives us a lot more flexibility. The beauty of the website is that if we get content that we just love, that we can't fit in the magazine, we do have the ability to put it up online. And we also spend a lot of time thinking, can we go deeper? Can we tell, it's like, okay, here's the story that everybody knows. What more can we tell? Everybody knows Union Avenue is a headache during rush hour. But why is it a headache during rush hour? Did it have to be? And the answer is no, it certainly did not. It's what we ended up with. And so we try to look at stories that there's a narrative, Memphians have a narrative about how things are, or why things are the way they are, and looking at, can we challenge that? Can we look at the historical record and present an alternative view that's based on facts? I hope I answered it. I was thinking and talking at the same time. What other questions does anyone have? You can pitch ideas to me. Absolutely. We've got a form on our website that says, if you click on contact, it says submit a story. And you don't have to send me a whole story. You don't have to have it written or anything like that. But I read every single one that comes in. Yeah. And so, or you can email me directly. I'm caroline.c@storyboardmemphis.com. The only confusing thing is our email addresses are .com and our website is .org. And we can't fix it because I'm our tech support and I don't know how to do it. But you can also email me directly and I'd be happy to hear any ideas people have, because we really want this to be a publication that's for our community, of, by, and for us. So the more information and ideas, feedback we can get from our community members, the more we're able to create something that our community is proud of. And that's really what we want. So does anyone have any other questions? Like I said, I can talk forever. I don't want to, but I'm very grateful that you all came today and for giving me the space to talk about our organization. And I hope that you'll read it and pass it on. And if you love it, please subscribe. So thank you so much. Have a great day.
Okay. Thank you, Caroline, for coming and speaking with us today. And next week will be Dale Skaggs with the plant sale preview. So you have a great rest of the week and a lovely weekend.